All right, so if I got the number right, I've watched 45 episodes of Vinland Saga now. I'm on season 2, episode 21. Spoiler alert. This is the one that affected me the most emotionally. I was actually kind of surprised how I reacted to this one. Again, Vinland Saga does a very good job of being incredibly violent, but not, for some reason, the violence isn't gratuitous because it's necessary to juxtapose against the peace that it espouses. I didn't expect this to be a philosophical journey. To be honest, I should have. My son is an incredibly deep person, incredibly philosophical person. So I'm not stunned when I thought about this, watching this episode. I thought a lot about him and the depth of a person that he is. He's a really, really deep person, a lot deeper than you'd think. And him having me watch this show is not a surprise. So let's get into it. So it starts out with Knut. He had promised to get the dead bodies together so that the families could come and claim them. So that's what they're doing. They're lining up all the bodies. Some of them dismembered, some heads are put with corpses because they've been dismembered. Anyway, it's vicious. But Floki, who I always forget his name, the commander of he's the commander of the Jams Vikings, I believe, or he's commander of Knut's army, and they hired the Jams Vikings. But anyway, Floki's talking to him, and the men want to stay in the beds on the farm, and he's like, no, because our job here wasn't to take over the farm. It was to get Kettle to surrender, and he hadn't. They realized that with all the men he's lost, that's going to have to be his move. So to surrender. So they send another envoy to Kettle to get him to surrender. Meanwhile, they're discussing, the Vikings wanting to sleep in beds and that in tents and to be able to pillage because they won. And he says, Knut's, he's being benevolent to the farmers. And he says, no, you can't do that. I'm going to pay you all handsomely for this mission. But no, you keep staying in your tents and let's give them a chance to surrender. So then the next thing you see is Omar. And he's walking through the camp of Kettle's, the people who have fought for Kettle. And they're in bad shape. You see the dead bodies lined up and they don't look a whole lot different than the live bodies that are in what is like a makeshift medical area where they're being treated by people as best they can. There's no hospitals back then, obviously, but, there's a guy with both his arms chopped off begging Omar to take care of his daughter, because he can't anymore because he doesn't have hands. Or his hands were chopped off, not his arms. And a bunch of other, you see a bunch of other, a bunch of other people who have been injured. I'm sorry, I flashed back to something else I forgot that I need to talk about with Knut before this happens, but I'll get back to that. It was hard to keep up. There was a lot that happened in this episode, and all of it was very important. This episode was very important. This is, like I said, I've got 4 episodes now left, so this is coming to the conclusion, so a lot of this stuff is really deep. Anyway, Omar gets really emotional seeing all the death and or the dying people and the hurt people, and he throws up. He literally throws up. It tickled me because a woman was like, "Are you okay? Is your stomach hurting?" It's like, might be the dead bodies in the blood. But anyway, he goes off, Omar, to the family area, and for the second time you see Kettle's wife, who you assume is Omar and Thorgil's mom. So Kettle's still unconscious. Omar walks in. Thorgil is there. The mom is there. And the old master, who is Kettle's father, is there. And they're discussing what to do. They're discussing the envoy has come. They don't show the envoy come, but they're discussing the fact that the envoy has come and said, hey, they want us to surrender. What are we going to do? Snake is there. I'm sorry. I forgot. Snake is there as well. Very important. So Thorgil is talking about it. Kettle's unconscious. So Thorgil's oldest. So Thorgil's like, look, Snake, if I say I want to fight, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to fight by your side. So of course Thorgil, again, he's got that Thorkel energy. He's like, oh, that's what I want to hear. Let's do this, you know. And then old Master comes with a shocker. For me anyway, it blew me away. He says, wait a minute, this isn't your decision to make. Kettle has decided who the person is to serve in his stead. And then they show Omar. What? Omar was the one that Kettle decided was going to be his successor. Oh my God. So I did not see this coming. Nowhere in this show did you see this coming. So Omar, he's still a mess from what he just saw. And this was the most emotional part of this entire series to me for all the stuff that I've seen. Omar's reaction and how he handled this. Omar, he flashes back at one point to when he killed a guy when he was being teased. And he got upset, and Thorgil helped him fight, and he stabbed the guy in the throat. That was earlier when he was walking through the camp. And he says, look, I'm going to surrender. And Thorgil's trying to egg him on to fight. And he's like, no, I'm going to surrender. I don't want any more bloodshed. I don't care. And he talks about how, because Thorgil was like, look, you were so brave when those guys came at you. You stood up and you fought. He's like, I wasn't brave. I made a fool of myself. I should have been brave enough to allow them to tease me and not say anything or not do anything. And he's bawling, crying, talking about this. And he's like, no, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to cause any more bloodshed. I don't care what happens. I don't care if we get exiled from the farm. I don't care. This needs to stop. And he's like, I should have been brave enough to allow the teasing. And he said, now I'm going to surrender. I don't care if you tease me. I don't care what you say. And then he turned, Thorgil's upset. And this is BS and whatever. And then the master says, well, the acting master of the farm has spoken. So he tells him, he's like, Omar, you got to go and tell the king yourself, So he turns around, and Snake stands by him. And he says, I'll go with you. And he says, and I won't laugh at you for your decision. I'm just like, and then the cool part right after that, he said what I felt, why this was so emotional to me. He's talking to Kettle, the old master's talking to Kettle, who's still unconscious, by the way. And he's talking to his unconscious son. He's like, for the cost of the farm. He said, this was not a waste, because for the cost of the farm, your son became a man today. And I was like, whoa, it was really deep the way it all played out. I did not see it coming. And I'll say this again. I still got more to talk about, but anime seems to do something emotionally with their work, with their art, that you don't see in American film. I don't care if it's animation. I don't care if it's real shows. There's a depth to anime, at least this particular anime. I don't know if this is anime across the board. I don't know if this is why kids, like, I'm Gen X. It seems like millennials love anime, and then Gen Z loves anime. And my kids are Gen Z. I don't know if that's why anime is so popular, but for me, this depth of emotion that it pulls out of you and that it displays is amazing to me, and it makes it so much better than things that I've seen, or so much richer than things that I see in American cinema or American TV. Anyway, going backward for a second, something very important happened. We hadn't seen the severed head of Knut's dad for a while, and he popped back up. This time it was in a vision. You didn't just see him. Well, all of this is a vision, obviously, but usually he's just standing there and you see the head sitting on a lamppost or something. This time he was actually transported to some dark place, and the head was kind of floating. Blood was dripping from the head, which doesn't make any sense because his dad's been dead for a while. I'm assuming all the blood's already drained out of his head. I would have rather not seen that, but okay. Anyway, his dad is basically talking to him about his moves and telling him this is the time to be benevolent. You're right to do what you're doing. Be careful who you're benevolent with. He's just giving him tips. And then he said something very interesting. He's laughing, giggling the whole time. He's like really getting into the fact that Canute has become this king, the king that he has. He says, you killed your father, you killed your brother, keep killing. He says, keep killing until the corpses, the path of corpses leads you to the paradise that you seek. Which reminds you about the fact that this guy is all about paradise. He got his awakening earlier, and then something happened along the way. He started sliding down this other path, but he wants the same paradise, seemingly, that Thorfinn is seeking. They're just seeking it in a different way. He used to be more passive, and now he's become aggressive. Thorfinn has become aggressive. Well, it was aggressive, and now it's become more passive. But anyway, that was that. So, you forget, I forgot anyway, that Thorfinn was going to speak to Knut, try to end this war himself. So Omar, and Omar never gets to Knut before the end of this episode. At one point they show Einar sitting at Arnhide's grave, remembering her, and then he hears about Thorfinn. He races out to try to stop Thorfinn. So then they show Thorfinn before Einar gets there. He's talking to the men, to Knut's men, trying to get them to let him see the king. And they're like, no, And the guy, he's like, they're like, he's obviously daydreaming, wake him up or something like that. And he punches Thorfinn to wake him up. He's like, basically like, are you awake yet? Obviously you're dreaming. You're not going to get to see the king, whatever. And then he says, look, the king knows me. Tell him I'm Thorfinn, so I'm Thor's. And, I used to guard him. And the guy's like, you little midget, you used to, whatever. And while they're talking to him, while the commotion's going on, you see the king's, Knut's second in command. The little guy looks like Pater. I don't know his name. It's not Pater, but, anyway, he go. It's not Pater, is it? Anyway. No, it's not. Pater starts kettle. Anyway, this guy, the king's second in command, goes off to talk to Knut and tells him, hey, look, Knut asks him, what's the commotion about? And he's like, this kid wants to see you. He's a farmhand. And it's like, he asked me to get his name and position. He's like, he's a farmhand. He said his name is Thorfinn, son of Thor's. And of course, Knut's like, and they show him touch his cheek because, of course, the slash on his cheek came from him. So, he's like, yeah, I know him. And the guy's like, and this is interesting. I want to know why he did this. He said, the guy says, do you want him brought to you? And he's like, no need. And I don't know if he's saying no need because he's like, he's going to get to me. I'm not really worried about it because I know this kid. He's going to get to me. Or if he's just like, I don't need to see him. But we'll see what happens. Going back, Einar rushes in, busts in between everybody, and tells Thorfinn, come on, let's leave. You're not about to risk your life for a kettle and this farm. Let's get out of here. And he says, Thorfinn just stands there, and he hears the guys making bets, and he's like, what are these bets about? Because, of course, he's surrounded by men as he's sitting in the middle talking to this guy trying to get to see the king. And the guys say, we're betting to see how many licks you can take before you die, basically. And he's like, I want to bet. It's like, so give me, so what's the highest number, basically? And he's like, basically, nobody's bet over 90. So if you take 100 licks, you win. And he's like, well, I don't want money. I want to get a chance to see the king. So if I can take 100 licks, then I get to go see the king. And they're like, oh my God, okay, let's do this. And, obviously, Einar thinks he's crazy. But Einar steps back, and he steps back to this guy who feels incredibly disrespected because a big, huge guy, almost like Thorkel size guy, is huge. And, Thorfinn tells Einar, it's a trick to taking hits, I'll be fine. And the episode ends with the guy slinging toward him and not making contact. So you guys see, and now, I assume he's going to make it, but that's how the episode ends. Very powerful episode. I never expected Omar to be the star of the episode, but his bravery in stepping up to Thorgil and being like, we don't end this, is amazing. Also, Kettle's wisdom and appointing him as the person who takes over and not Thorgil. You assume Kettle understood that Thorgil is warmonger, so it was going to be bad. I also want to give a shout out to there's a person, I can't remember his name, on the comments on the last episode, who was giving me a tip on how to remember who Fox and Badger are, because I keep mixing them up, and I do appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to make sure I get that right, because these names are terrible. I'm terrible with names. But anyway, this is like my longest episode. I'm going to stop, or my longest video. I'm going to stop now, and it'll be episode 22 next.